I want to start today by inviting Hans-Georg Eichler, who, as you know, is the Senior Medical Officer at the EMA and has been a long-term advocate of this initiative, to come and talk to us about his impressions of where this came from as an initiative and what's going on, how we're doing. He has a very important perspective, and we're very happy to hear from him. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good morning. So I was asked to give you a brief overview of where we started this journey and where we hope to go on that route. So how it all started was that a growing number of stakeholders in this ecosystem realized that we are facing a number of competing objectives. There is, of course, first the desire by patients to have timely or early access to address unmet needs. No surprise here. But at the same time, we as regulators have a duty to only allow well-studied drugs on the market. So there's a square in the circle. Then we want to enable new forms of treatment, precision medicines, ATMPs, so-called difficult indications. For example, slow-moving diseases like Alzheimer's, where you need to start a trial 30 years before the clinical outcome. How can we do that while at the same time relying only on robust study methodologies, endpoints we understand, etc.? And lastly, there is a conundrum that will now come to the fore. We all know, to put it mildly, that the relationship between R&D costs and prices is not a linear one. But still, you don't need a crystal ball to understand that something is now about to move in the arena of drug prices. And when that happens, the cost of R&D will necessarily come to the fore. So how can we square the circle of, on the one hand, ensure the sustainability of an innovation engine that is hopefully productive, but at the same time ensure sustainability of our healthcare systems? So that was the starting point. So a number of people had the idea we need to change the way we bring drugs to market. And it started from a regulatory perspective. And initially, you got terms and ideas that were called adaptive licensing, approval, staggered approval, etc. All of this focusing still on the license. So all of these terms up here are pretty much, sorry, that isn't working very well, but the terms in the first line are pretty much interchangeable. But it quickly dawned on a number of us that this was necessary, the licensing step, but it's not sufficient in itself. We have to broaden this. And that's when the name was changed. So now we talk about pathways or MAPPs, medicines, adaptive pathways to patients. And at the EMA, we consciously made that change. So we put out something on our website where we said we have changed the name because we understand that the scope has to change. So we now use only this idea of pathways. We want to deliberately move away from the sole focus on the licensing. What do we hope to achieve? And this sentence that I'm showing you here comes from the mission statement of a project that I will describe in a minute, and others will as well. And this was hotly debated. We sat for at least an hour, at least 30 people in a room, to come to agreement on one single sentence. And this is it. So, we want to foster access to beneficial treatments. And here's an important point to make. There's a lot of pushback against this whole idea, saying you're playing on unmet needs. Just because some patients have unmet needs doesn't mean you can sell them hope, empty hope. No, we don't want to sell empty hope. We want to sell help. If you want to sell help, you don't just focus on the unmet need. You also need a product that has a reasonably good promise to address that need. And that is in that word beneficial. It means there is an unmet need and you have a product with promise or potential. So we don't want to sell hope. Then there is something about the right patient group at the earliest appropriate time. We recognize that not all patients within a therapeutic area are the same. There are different strata, and we move into that stratified medicine. And what is the appropriate time for one stratum may not be the same as for another stratum. So this goes from big to small rather than small to big patient groups. And then this was put in at the insistence of HTAs and payers who say, look, this is all very nice, but if we cannot sustain our healthcare budgets, then we don't want any of it. So this is now sort of the mission statement of this endeavor. Who stands to benefit? We hope we can create a win-win situation. So for patients and providers, it would, as you have heard also from Jeremy, it would mean earlier access to promising new medicinal products. Another thing that is poorly understood, but we hope it will pan out, is if we also focus on downstream events, monitoring, appropriate utilization in the marketplace, we can lower the realized harm. There is inherent risk in any product, but what you realize in terms of harms is also dependent on how well you monitor, how you utilize it. And we're hoping that we can realize that. I don't have the time to go into that detail, but it may be worth your while to get your heads around that concept. What's in for pharma? An earlier revenue stream and staggered development cost. You're not placing one big bet on one mega trial, you can split it up. Can you de-risk the cost of late-stage failures and post-market withdrawals? Let me focus on the late-stage failures, because this is contentious. If you pursue a lousy target that is not validated, or if your product doesn't engage with the target, then MAPPs can do nothing for you. You fail, and you should fail. You shouldn't go to market. But what we hope, so in that case, you cannot de-risk drug development. But as I said earlier, what you possibly can is you don't place one big bet, but you stagger your development in such a way that if you fail hopefully less expensive. And again, hopefully, we will see maybe not fewer post-marketing withdrawals, but fewer Vioxx-style post-marketing withdrawals. And that in itself would be a boon for the whole industry and for the individual company. What is in for regulators? Why are we there? We hope that we can achieve continuous reduction of uncertainty throughout the lifetime of our product. And we hope that with those risk management paradigms, we can restore or regain or maintain, whatever your perspective is, public confidence. What's in for payers? Some of them are in there because they see benefit. Not everybody's convinced, let me be clear. Some see that the adaptive reimbursement plan that we're part of this game could be a good opportunity to align value with price and utilization. And they understand that if there is a continuous benefit-risk information flow, they can better support follow-on coverage decisions. So that is the hoped-for benefit. Now, if we want to realize these benefits, first we have to give up our silo thinking. I know your companies are still structured. There is market access, there is regulatory, there is marketing, etc. Maybe that is not the best way of looking at this. So can we see the lifespan of a product as a continuum with those elements that are shown here and 2 milestones that you all know? It is a continuum. There never was a magic moment. And maybe adaptive pathways means a combination of adaptive licensing and managed entry agreements if we focus on those 2 key milestones. So what will have to change if we realize this concept? And I do apologize that I do not have the time. I was given 15 minutes, so I cannot go into all these details. There is a paper that many of us and a number of co-authors are in this room that we have written to make this clear what we mean by these 6 points or transitions that need to happen. I already said this idea that there is a magic moment and you can divide the lifespan of a product into an experimental phase and then a market phase, that is a dead concept. There is a continuum between experimentation and utilization. That's also an ethical challenge for some people. So we have to look at the whole lifespan. The positive thing is, if we can achieve good monitoring in a marketplace, we can go away from the need to predict what will happen to continuous monitoring. That could mean we could lower the uncertainty barrier. We have to change the way we look at evidence generation. I still grew up as evidence-based medicine is everything, and it is synonymous with randomized controlled trial. Everything else is no good. Maybe we have to revisit this, make better use of the real-world information that is now becoming available and be more open to that. Big populations, we have to go to small populations. That will be a change for some of your marketing thinking. There will be smaller niche markets, maybe more of those. The focus on licensing must go. We have to have a focus on patient access. And then, something that is very difficult to swallow for my physician colleagues. I was a prescribing physician, and I prided myself on the liberty to do as I please, because I'm a doctor, therefore I know best. Well, we will have to go away from this open utilization to much more managed utilization. And that has consequences for many stakeholders. So, that is in a nutshell, very briefly, the concept. Again, I refer you to papers that are out there that describe all this in more detail. I will spend the rest of my time describing a few initiatives that we are now undertaking at the EMA. And we understand that if we want to achieve goal, we will have to do several initiatives that hopefully will be complementary to each other. So it is no secret, and some of you know, that we are in debates to improve the operational interaction between us and sponsors and other stakeholders. And we're trying to come up with a pathway, or call it whatever you want to call it, that will provide better procedural support for select products that have major public health impact. If you think this could perhaps be similar to the US FDA breakthrough, well, maybe it could. That's operational. I will not discuss it today. I will discuss only these last two. We also understood that we can discuss concepts in a room like this until the end of time. But we ultimately will have to get our hands dirty, and we will need to discuss individual concrete products. So we did the pilots, the case pilots, and then I will come to the MAPPs IMI project. First, the pilots. As I said, we understood we need to discuss concretely. It's nice to stay high level, but at one point you have to drill down. So we put out an invitation to the industry. That was about a year ago. We had a bit of a headache because we feared that industry would not respond. This is like you invite everybody for dinner and nobody comes. It's a bit embarrassing. But I have to say, industry did come. I'll show you in a minute. So we put these rules of the game out. It will be a safe harbor environment. It will not be just the regulators and the industry as we used to be. No, we want HTA bodies, ideally payers. They haven't come yet, but they will. And of course, patients in the room. We will stay within the existing regulatory framework. We're not betting on changing regulation, and we can discuss this later. I don't think we need to, because our regulation is flexible enough to accommodate all of that in the current tool system. And it should have no consequences on future approval. So it's strictly non-committal. We are grateful, I'm personally grateful, that industry did come for dinner, so to speak. We had sufficient interest. We had, I think by now, almost 60 products submitted. We have deselected a few. We can discuss why. And now we have a number of projects in these in-depth discussions. And I was asked by the organizers, can I comment on the experience so far? And what I give you now is a very personal, it's not an official EMA position, it's my very personal impression. And the question, but I've discussed it with others, with the chair of the Scientific Advice Working Group, and they share broadly this view. Have we achieved the hoped-for level of creativity? And I would say, well, look, the conventional pathway is on the top of this, and I don't have to describe it, you all know this. When we came out with this invitation, there was a few explanatory notes. And the explanatory notes said, well, could you, for example, try to get a marketing authorization for a small population early on, then you follow on with real-world data, and at the same time you extend your population with other trials. We put that in. And industry very kindly followed exactly that. So this is pretty much what we're now seeing with all these submissions. Is that the best we can do intellectually? Well, maybe we can go a level up. And I'm saying this here because I want to stimulate you. This is a non-committal brainstorming exercise. Other new ideas are allowed. For example, and this is only an example, don't please come and quote me that this is the threshold. I made this up. Could you say, and could you discuss with regulators and with payers and others, imagine we do an uncontrolled phase 1-2 study. in a serious condition, where assume the background event rate, I call it success here, I could have said event, doesn't matter, is around 30%. If we show an event or success rate of greater 80%, this is so smashing, this is so important, that patients should have that drug now. There is no doubt that the drug is effective. And provided there isn't sort of people are not killed, of course, then you could get your marketing authorization for that group right away. You don't have to do anything else. Why would you? Because it's convincing. And then you follow on with real-world data, and then you can expand your population group. But if your event rate is somewhere in the middle, so it's not so clear, but it's also not dead, then you would have to do another trial, as normally. And if it's below 30%, you probably don't have a product at all. It's dead. So could you imagine that we discuss that we discuss those thresholds to increase your predictability as well? And we involve patients and payers who will say, okay, yes, we are willing to pay, provided you show us that high success rate. Otherwise, no. So take that, please, as a stimulus, and don't come, please, with exactly that kind of example. Now, lastly, the IMI came out with a call for proposal for what they call a coordination and support action. I'm still unclear what exactly that means, but I'm sure Natalie will be able to tell us exactly. Anyway, we thought this is so to the core of our business that we want to lead that. It's no secret anymore. We put together a consortium, we submitted to that, and it's likely to go ahead. So what you can read here were the expected deliverables. That is not our text, that is an IMI call text. They want to do gap analysis, inform research activities. There is something about knowledge management. Basically, the idea is we recognize there are opportunities for this, but there are also obstacles. Can you help identify where the opportunities are, how we can best use them, and also address the obstacles? I think that is in a nutshell, I hope you will not disagree, what the expectation was. So we came up with that consortium. I will not steal my colleagues' thunder because they will discuss that in more detail, just to say that we structured it around 3 work packages or broad themes that I'm sure Luc will discuss more about this, so I will not spend time on it. But this will now likely start within about a month's time. Let me conclude. I believe, and many of us believe, that the MAPPs ideas, these broad ideas, seem to be the best option that we have to address those competing objectives that I described at the outset of this presentation. At least I haven't heard a better proposal to address those competing objectives. There are certainly plenty of opportunities to be seized. Just think about the whole development that we are now having with real-world data that 15 years ago we couldn't discuss because there was nothing to discuss. And now we can talk about methodologies, quality, etc. Much has changed. And we have a golden opportunity now because many decision makers are aligned, including now many European payers. And if I read and watch what is happening with the US payers who are now up in rebellion, I think there may be another opportunity there. So for now, we have a golden opportunity. An opportunity always means an opportunity to succeed, but also to screw up. So we hope we can focus on the former, not on the latter. And we believe the time is now right to collaborate proactively to facilitate this idea. Thank you very much.